Hello everybody, today we're going to see how CLI for Microsoft 365 allows you to manage your governance, security, and compliance of your Microsoft 365 tenant. So basically the Purview stuff. So Purview stuff, what's it all about? Okay, let's make it super simple. Let's say we have our Microsoft 365 tenant, which is our world, where we collaborate, keep all our files and content. We communicate, keep our messages, store our plans, and other stuff. And now when we have all of those things wrapped in one single M365 tenant, we are starting to think of, is this actually secure? So aren't our all confidential stuff kept in our tenant? So if they are not leaked outside, maybe shared to someone externally that they shouldn't be shared, or do our employees actually do what we want them to do, so they don't, for example, keep sensitive information like password txt on our tenant or stuff like that. So Microsoft Purview is actually the answer to all those problems, which is an additional cloud-based security layer that allows you to check the governance, security, and compliance of your data that is kept on your Microsoft 365 tenant. Pretty neat, and gives you this confidence that all of the things that is kept on your Microsoft 365 tenant is the way you want it to be kept. So this is information that you allow, or you basically want them to be on your tenant, and if they are secure, so for example, not leaked or shared outside. And now, knowing that you can use CLI for Microsoft 365 as an additional script or automation layer to manage Microsoft Purview that allows you to put the security layer on your Microsoft 365 tenant is a really awesome stuff. So before we dive deep into it, just a short reminder that CLI for Microsoft 365 is an npm global package. So if you want to use it, you need to first install it globally using the npm install or the yarn global add command, and you also expose it over Docker. So you can get it using the standard docker run command to get our latest CLI for Microsoft 365 image. And how we can use CLI to actually manage Purview? Well, we have the Purview section or area or whatever you want to call it in the CLI for Microsoft 365 command. And as you can see, we have audit log, retention events, retention labels, sensitive labels, threat assessment, and then on each SPO artifacts like list item, files, and lists, you can ensure, so basically add or check if those retention labels are there, or you can remove them. Okay, so we know that we have those comments, but what does it actually mean? What is the difference between sensitivity labels and retention labels? What are retention events? And how I can actually use those? I want to see this in action. So for this, I asked one of the CLI for Microsoft 365 maintainers, Martin Lingstuyl, to give us a demo about that. So let's go.
So hi everybody, today I'm here back live with Martin again. So Martin, maybe you want to do a short introduction about yourself again?
Yes, of course. I'm Martin Lingstuyl. I'm a Microsoft 365 architect in the Netherlands, working on things like DMS, document management, productivity, things like that, retention, security. A lot of things. I'm also a Microsoft MVP in the category of M365 Development, which I really like.
That's good. I also like this category, and we're gonna be in the renewal process quite soon. But anyway, regardless, beside this topic, so the things you mentioned, retention, security, it's kind of connected what I wanted to ask you about today. Today, I really would like to talk about Purview and how CLI for Microsoft 365 helps you manage Purview. So what actually is Purview? If you could explain from your expertise point of view, the big picture.
Yeah, so really big picture and really short. So Purview is like Microsoft's offering to have a security and compliance suite of tools that can help you manage your tenants. So security and compliance, it involves a lot of subjects like retention policies, like information protection, sensitivity labels, things like that. There's a lot of things involved, a very broad topic, a very powerful suite of tools to use.
Why would someone be interested in using Purview at all? So why would someone need retention labels or sensitive labels? So why?
So, well, for us in the Netherlands, there's and broader, and like in Europe, there's a lot of regulations coming through for things like privacy laws. You know, the GDPR in Europe is, for example, a very famous set of rules around, and that rule set kind of like describes how long you need to keep personal information about people. You know, you have to delete it after a certain amount of time. So like organizations and governments around Europe will need to comply with those regulations, and Purview is Microsoft's way of implementing that. So you can use Purview to apply regulations to your business and to the data that you have. So this is basically what it is. So, for example, retention labels is like a way to set like retention terms on data, to say like this data needs to be deleted after 5 years, or this data needs to be kept around forever, and this data needs to be deleted after 7 years. It's just a way of forcing clarity in your data about retention and deletion.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So you can enforce those rules. And I saw CLI has a Purview section and a lot of things on the list item, list, file, scopes to set the retention labels. So what part of Purview CLI allows us to manage? And can you show it off a bit?
Yeah, of course. Let me just share my screen for a bit. So I've got a screen here with a terminal.
Clean terminal.
Clean, yes, of course. So there's we've got a set of things. So I'm basically talking a lot about retention, which is also only just a part or a small part of Purview. I mean, we also have things like sensitivity labels, for example, you know, where you have information protection in place, like to encrypt your data. So that's a different part. But retention, that's a part of where the CLI is really advanced. So we've got a lot of commands covering this ground. So if you run the M365 Purview commands, you'll see that we actually have quite some commands that talk about retention. So what we can do here is like we can, for example, get a list of retention labels, which is like retention in Purview is like the place where you create retention labels and you can apply them to data. And for example, in SharePoint or in Exchange, like you can apply them to documents, you can apply them to emails, and these retention labels are created in Purview. So if you can see here, I've created a list of retention labels, and I can manage these labels using using the CLI for Microsoft 365. And I can also apply them to data using the CLI. So this, like this, you can easily like automate, like create solutions that can automate the application of retention labels to data throughout your tenant, which is an awesome subject because like normally people want to avoid doing everything like manually, right? So having to select a retention label for each document, like a lot of manual labor. So you would really like solution where you can automate this and have this like applied to your tenant to the right places and have retention labels in place everywhere where it's needed. So that's basically what it is. So what you can see here is like a list of labels that I have in my tenant, which is just a list of dummy labels, basically. I can create them here. I can also apply them here to data, which is
so how easy would it be to create a new retention label, and what things do we need to consider when you create a retention label using CLI for Microsoft 365? So what parameters can you set, and what would be the use case to automate this?
Yeah, let's just run the help command for this. Let's not do that. There it is. Let's start over. So let's just run the help command for adding a retention label. So basically what you can do is you can, for example, configure the name, of course, of a label. So what name you want to have. You can add a certain behavior. So what is the behavior that you want to apply to documents that are labeled with this label? For example, you want to retain documents, like you want people to not be able to delete them, for example. Retain them as a record. That's also a part of Purview. And you can set a action after the retention period has been completed. So for example, if a retention label has been configured to keep data around for 5 years, as soon as that 5 years is reached, you can force an action like delete the item or start a disposition review. So this is like basically what it is. So you can of course set the retention duration, which is like how long you want content to be kept around for. And the last one is, or one of the last ones, which is I think most important, is the retention trigger. So when do you want when do you want a retention period to start? So for example, the retention period of, for example, a label that applies that needs to delete data after like 5 years. You could say this 5 years should start at the moment when the document is created. Like, so you create a document and 5 years later it's deleted. Or you can use, for example, different types of retention triggers, like date modified. So if you apply this if you apply such a label to a document, this means that as soon as people stop modifying the document, 5 years after that, the document will be deleted. So as long as they keep modifying it, it will be kept around until people stop modifying it, and then the retention term starts. And it will be deleted 5 years after that, and that's it. So there's a couple of options here. So it's quite powerful.
Okay, so of course you can probably query, so like get as one retention label. That we saw that you can list all of the retention labels. So we also probably have the get command, right?
Yeah.
And remove.
Yeah, absolutely. You can manage them. Yeah.
So we could think of a scenario here in CLI that would help you solve that. You could have a script that queries, gets, or lists, or whatever, the retention labels you have on your tenant, and see if the one you're interested in are there, you know. So you are listing all of the retention labels, getting them one by one, checking their properties. And for example, if there is a retention label that will trigger when a user, like employee, leaves the company, and we need to return files he created or files that are connected to him as an employee for the next 5 years, you know. And this is the part of CLI that you could automate using those commands. You could create a script that checks the tenant. If we have those rules, our company is supposed to have, and if not, create them, you know.
Yeah, it's like you can enforce the desired configuration of your tenant in such a way, like enforce that you have the right labels in place, things like that. Yeah.
And besides the retention label, add, get, list, I saw before when you shown us the Purview section of the CLI, there are also like retention events or other retention kind of connected commands. Could you say a bit more about those?
Yeah, retention events is like an advanced topic. I don't think we should get into that too deeply, but it kind of means that you can configure your own date from which a retention term should go and count. So, for example, if you want to delete or if you want to enforce documents for when a person left the company, you know, you want to say from a privacy perspective, all this data needs to be deleted 2 years after he leaves the company. That means you need to use this date, like the date he left the company. That should be the date that the retention period starts running. And for such scenarios, the retention triggers that we have don't really help. So we have a last retention trigger, which is called date of event. So the event is the date he left the company. And then from that moment on, these 2 years will start counting and everything will be deleted after that. So that's basically what retention events are. It's an advanced topic for.
So CLI allows us to create those retention events. Could you see what commands we have connected to retention?
Yes. So what we have is, for example, you've got event types, which is the type of events that you can create, and you've got events. And for events, you can also manage them. So create them, add, list, and remove them. So this is really powerful because this really ties into a automation solution with Purview and retention.
Yeah.
So for example, if I apply retention label automatically on documents in SharePoint, I will then need to create the event as a separate thing I need to do. And doing this together will help me retain my data for the correct time. So I'll need to apply the label, and then I'll need to create the event. And these two things are ideal to do from a scripting tool like this.
Yeah, exactly. You can come to a clean tenant with your scripts that use CLI for Microsoft 365, and you can set up retention labels from scratch, going with retention event types, with retention event, and with retention labels, adding them, listing, checking if they are correct. And okay, but can we have a script that actually, let's say we want to have some kind of automation script going on in the background that scans, I don't know, lists we have on a site or files we have on a list, and this script will decide whether we add some kind of retention label to a file or not. Is it possible to do something like this with CLI? Can we apply or somehow check or ensure if there is a retention label on a file or an item, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is basically part of the, for example, for files, this is part of the SharePoint, the SharePoint group of commands we have. So if we've got for example, a file, and then we can, let's see, we can ensure a retention label on the file. So if we now paste in a file URL, and then we can paste in, for example, a retention label. I believe it's like this. Now we can, like with this short script, we can ensure that a certain file has a certain label. That's like basically it. So
can we run the help command for this one? So can you put just like dash help or dash help?
Yeah. Let's see.
Okay, let's see. And even in the examples, right?
We have examples, right? We've got them here. Yeah.
So perfect, because then actually you can go file by URL, by ID, by name, and the label by name. Okay, perfect.
Absolutely.
And the same, I guess, you can do with list items. You know, with every file and its core is a list item. Kinda, you know. So you can expose. Also, we have those commands in the SPO list item area, right, in the tree, and also unlist, I suspect, right?
We can remove them. The correct, So we can remove labels from files.
That's correct. But also we can. What I meant is, I wanted to ask that you can also apply a retention label on a list itself, right?
Oh, right. Yeah. Basically, that's correct. That's like what Microsoft calls default labels, and it means that everything that's added to that list or library will get this retention label by default. And we can do that.
Perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we can not only manage retention labels from Purview, like settings point of view, but also have create scripts that use CLI for Microsoft 365 that will allow you to scan, for example, your site, go over a specific list, and impose the retention labels on the list themselves as a default retention label or on a specific item or file. You know, so this is pretty good. Okay. At the very beginning, when you listed everything we have under Purview, besides retention labels, I saw there are some other stuff. So can we go a bit about those commands? So the first one I noticed was the audit logs. Audit log. What's that? So if I would want to automate something with this command, what would be the benefit to check for audit logs? So how can we run it? And
well, the audit log is basically the analytics part of Purview with which you can just see like what events have taken place inside of your tenant. So it's really useful. I think people like from the security side of the organization use it all the time to monitor what's going on. For example, I think I've recently built a solution that automatically retrieves records from the audit log to see if certain people were giving themselves access to specific sites, for example, like admins giving themselves permission to like restricted sites. So we want to be able to see that, you know, to see if people that have additional or have more permissions than regular, like kind of misuse that to So this is like a scenario that we scripted, and this is exactly what you could do with a tool like this. So you can so using the interface, the user interface, using the browser-based portal for Microsoft 365 for Purview, you can easily like create audit searches and get all that information out from it. But using the CLI, you can do it much faster, like using a script, and you can even automate it and see to run it on a schedule to see if those events occur regularly and do something about that.
Okay, so it's a perfect command to run in a schedule kind of thing and check, for example, filter the outage log list by a specific event we are trying to oversee, and then based on this, either, I don't know, send an email to someone or run another script or whatever, right? So this is a perfect command as a starting point for your script for more scenarios to automate. This is really handy at this kind of starting point. So to have an audit log command here in CLI, to actually have this opportunity for CLI to automate based on an event that will happen, and that will scan those audit logs and check for these events we don't want, and then based on this, something can be done in your script, instead of having an admin that periodically goes to the Purview admin side, checks the audit logs, maybe scan them and try to reason over them and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. So even if, I mean, it's possible to do it. For many people, I think the Purview portal is a perfectly fine place to be in as well. But creating, I mean, you need to wait for audits to run for quite some time. So using CLI is also much faster to do. And I think if you're just on your, as an admin, you're working from your machine, it's kind of an easy way to access the same data in a quick way.
Yeah, and also from my experience, UI tends to change, and Purview has changed quite a bit of quite of times. Yeah, I would need to rewrite this. Anyway, the UI of Purview changed a couple of times since I started with it and started learning it, using it. And UI tends to change, and sometimes it changes without us expecting it. And script, the way we will write it, usually the first time you will write it, then you will have the script. It will be just this, and in the terminal, it usually looks the same every time,
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we have the audit logs covered. We have the retention event types labels. So we talked a bit about retention, which is a huge part of Purview, actually a small part of Purview, but a significant part, which gives us a lot of scenarios we can cover. And then I see we have sensitivity labels. So could you talk a bit about those?
Yeah, so for sensitivity labels, I mean, this is about, of course, about information protection. So can we classify content so that we can apply certain restrictions or certain behavior on that? So for example, for certain documents, we want to apply a restricted label so that this content will be encrypted by default so that it cannot leave the tenant easily, things like that, or certain content needs to be labeled in such a way that it cannot be opened by external users. Like all kinds of scenarios are possible with sensitivity labels. So it stands to reason that we would like to use sensitivity labels from a CLI perspective as well. We do not have a lot of commands currently yet around that. So we can list sensitivity labels, we can get sensitivity labels, and we can do something with policy settings. And that's all currently, but I do envision us adding more to this so that we can manage and apply them in a much easier way.
Yeah, this is a good starting point, and the best part is CLI for Microsoft 365 is open source. So if you are watching this and you're thinking where I could add my value to CLI, well, you can help us build this area. There's a lot of commands we can still add here to the sensitive labels, like the remove and add commands. So I probably those issues are already ready, but ready for being grabbed and developed, with us to make this product even better. And sensitivity labels was why I had to stop putting password txt on the SharePoint libraries, because it just got encrypted, and it's a total pain for me, to be honest. My memory. Okay, awesome. I think that's about it when it comes to Purview. I think we have a lot already, but it's a small part of this part of Microsoft 365. So if you are watching us and you are thinking where I can add value, well, help us build the Purview area, and we already have much, but we can have a lot more. You know.
Yeah.
Okay. Any final words before we wrap this up?
No. No final word. I mean,
Like,
there's so much to say about this. It's just, but it's just an awesome suite of tools, and especially I think for a lot of organizations, this is going to be very powerful and very important to move into using these tools. And I hope that for many organizations, this CLI and maybe other CLIs as well can be a great help into applying things like retention and information protection to their tenant.
perfect. Thanks a lot, Martin, to help me go over this part of CLI, which is really hard for me, and I'm still all the time learning something new. So I guess that's it, and we'll see each other next time. And happy coding till then, right?
Happy coding.
Perfect.
Perfect. And before we wrap this up, just wanted a short reminder that if you need any other additional support regarding CLI for Microsoft 365, you can always check our CLI docs. You can also visit our GitHub repository and open up an issue or a discussion, or join the CLI for Microsoft 365 Discord server, which is a dedicated Discord server only regarding CLI for Microsoft 365. Or you can also find us on the global Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community Discord server, where there is a dedicated channel for CLI for Microsoft 365 as well. Happy coding, everybody!